Okay, it's 12 o'clock and can call the meeting of the Missoula City Cemetery to order. Looking at the names that are on the screen, I'm the only board member who is here, which I don't think we have a quorum to proceed. Can staff jump in and verify that?
Has anybody heard from Kim or Pat?
I haven't, Brett.
Great, here's Kim. I'd ask that everybody turn on your cameras if you're going to be in the meeting.
Hey, Pat or Paul, I'm trying to turn mine on and it says it won't allow me because the host has stopped the meeting. So I don't know who the host is.
Sorry, Brian, you should be able to now.
Okay, thanks, Ash.
So I think we're just waiting to see if we can get a quorum before we begin. Okay, so rather than everyone just sitting here, I'm thinking that maybe we reschedule this meeting. I know there's some time sensitive things here that, or I understand that there are, that Jeremy was going to present. But it
Yeah,
seems,
Paul, if we could maybe go ahead and make the presentation. This meeting is being recorded and I know we don't have a quorum, but it would be good for us to get the information out there to the board. If they could watch the video afterwards and get caught up, that would be great. I don't know that we need a decision, but it would be helpful to have recommendations or just discussion from the board on what's moving forward with some of these new business items. And also I have to leave at 12:45 for another meeting, so things are pretty tight.
yeah, I guess I'm just reluctant, given that there's only 2 board members present, that I don't know that you're going to get the depth of discussion that would be appropriate if they were a full board. And I appreciate that, that there's a need for this and that the board could watch it following, but that wouldn't allow them to participate in any discussion. That'd be my concern.
Well,
Kim,
what I
don't
can
know.
tell you is that this will be an item at City Council on Wednesday next week, and if the board wants to have input before a decision is made, it would need to happen at that committee meeting on Wednesday.
Kim, would you like to weigh in on anything here? Kim, you are muted if you are talking.
I'm sorry. I don't know if should we get special meeting set up for Monday or Tuesday of next week? I mean, I don't mind hearing it right now, but if it's something that the board has to show that they're good with it going before city council, then it's sort of.
So I think that's a good idea. It would be good if we could do the presentation today, and if the board wants to convene a special meeting prior to Wednesday to have additional discussion, I think that would be great.
Okay, I'll defer to staff again. Ashley, can you respond to the ability to set up a special meeting? Or Brian or Brent?
I think we could probably set a special meeting up before Wednesday. I don't know if Jeremy's schedule would allow it, but if he wants to do the presentation, we could rerun it during the special meeting. Then the board could hopefully have a quorum and then discuss it.
So, yeah, I don't know if my schedule will allow it, and I don't know if we'll meet the notice requirements. So that's the problem.
And Ashley or Katie, do you have any thoughts on that or ability to say?
I'll need to check with the clerk's office to make sure they have room in their calendar so we can get this rescheduled for hopefully Monday.
Okay, thank you. I think that'd be a good thing to do, just so the board can make some comments on whatever was going to be presented.
And I guess just for additional clarity, so it's going to be heard at council committee on the 11th, and then they would make a final formal decision on the 16th, but they often will vote on these things and it goes on the consent agenda. So that's where the timing is. It's best if the board does have comments that we get those in on the 11th.
Well, with that, I'm going to skip the call to order, roll call, and approval of minutes. I'm going to skip public comments and jump right into new business. And Jeremy will just take over from there, and we'll just record this for a time when the board can get together next week.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I appreciate that. And I do apologize for the quick nature of this, but I did want to give the board a chance to have some input because it definitely is something that affects the cemetery and is part of the property that we've been talking about for quite a while. So I have a quick presentation. Corey Aldridge is here from Mountain Line. Corey's the general manager, and he can answer any additional questions that you might have. So what we're talking about today is a new facility for Mountain Line. Mountain Line is the transit company in Missoula and operates the bus system and is a independent agency that the city collaborates very closely with. And we've been talking with Mountain Line over the last couple of years about their need for additional space. They have outgrown their facility, which is over on Shakespeare. It sits on only 2 acres, and they've simply just outgrown that space. And what it's really limiting is our ability to expand the transit system. So their ability to add more buses, to increase their service to 15-minute service on a number of routes, and also convert to a fleet of electric buses. And it's all at this point really limited by their space. They have done great things around creating a zero fare system and growing their ridership and building support from the public, which passed a mill levy back in the last election. They've been looking for a new home for the facility for a while to support new offices, charging stations, maintenance shops, storage areas, all the things they need to run the bus system. So, we're a partner in that, trying to help them find the right location and help them position for the grant money that they would need to build this new facility. And so the timing on this is important because the grant opportunity came up and is due at the end of May. And so we're trying to very quickly align our forces around getting Mountain Line the best chance of obtaining that grant. And having a site secured for this new facility, we think is going to be a really important consideration in that grant and whether or not they are successful. So if you remember the 2016 North Reserve Scott Street Master Plan, we had set aside additional property for the cemetery, sort of representing the same area as that property that we currently utilize for street division activities, as future growth in the cemetery. And then through our strategic plan process, we reevaluated our need for that additional property and determined that we really don't need additional expansion in the cemetery. What we really need is to be able to make some other infrastructure improvements in the cemetery, including new office building and other site improvements to really make the cemetery function better. And that this additional land was an opportunity to provide some revenue to the cemetery to complete some of those things. And then in our city planning, we also see this as an opportunity for additional housing in this Scott Street neighborhood. And the bus facility kind of fits in that some of this land in purple was still intended to be light industrial use, where housing may not be appropriate. And in some cases, it sort of blends together where those industrial uses are adjacent to the future housing uses. And so the property that we're looking at is this one here, and I'll show you on an aerial photo next. So it's a little bit different than what the master plan suggested, but it's not entirely out of character with what was contemplated. So here's a visual of what that actually looks like. So what Mountain Line is doing is they're looking at this private piece of property where there's some trucking operations and some other things, and they would negotiate to acquire that property. And then the city is looking at entering into an agreement for use of this property to the north for a portion of that property. And the way it would be broken up is Mountain Line needs about 9 to 10 acres, and so they would take the southern portion of that property, and then there would be an alley and a remnant piece to the north along Otis Street that could be developed for residential use, and that would provide for the ability to do some transitions between those two uses, and also create some shared parking opportunities where we can benefit from the parking that Mountain Line also needs. So this helps us establish that residential housing that we need. It also helps establish the street grid, both in terms of completing sidewalks and transportation connections, and also the utilities that would serve the area. Works on diverting some of the bus and truck traffic away from the residential areas as we create those new corridors. And it establishes that buffer that we've talked about for the cemetery as the Burn Street corridor, which is this corridor here. So it kind of creates that edge of the cemetery and the residential neighborhood that provides a little bit of separation and a change of use. So what's going to council next week is a proposed letter of intent where Mountain Line would purchase approximately 3 acres of land at fair market value from the city. Mountain Line would dedicate the right-of-ways for Burn Street and Bulwer. And they would also look at additional bus service to the NRSS area as that area develops. Mountain Line will also enter into a shared parking agreement to help support that residential housing and reduce the amount of parking lot that we have to build. And they would create a transportation demand management plan for their employees to reduce the number of vehicle trips, and finally work with the neighborhood on design and mitigation of impacts with their facility. So that's what's contained in the agreement that's going to council. And the next steps would be to get a recommendation or some input from the cemetery board to go to council. It'll be in committee on the 11th. And like I said, it's likely that it would have a final decision on the 16th, assuming what they do in committee on the 11th. The grant application is due at the end of May, and then we hope to hear about the grant by the end of August. And then from that point, if we're successful, there's probably a year or so before we'd be ready to break ground with any new construction. And we don't know what's going to happen with the grant. If we don't get the grant, that would change this timeline. There might be another opportunity to submit another grant application about a year from now. So in this letter of intent, we've included the opportunity to try again later if we're not immediately successful. So that's what I have for a presentation. I'd like to just entertain any questions and give Corey an opportunity to speak if he has anything to add.
Yeah, let me add something onto that at the end. Thanks, Jeremy. One of the questions that may come up is why there? Why not out by the airport? And for public transportation, the farther away we are from the center core of our routes, the more it costs for us to operate. We have increased deadhead hours and mileage, and it's surprising how much that does increase our costs. So if we're out by the airport from where we currently are, that would add in the ballpark of $500,000 in additional operating expense. So for us to be able to to put as much service out on the streets, the closer we can be is better.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I don't know that the board is prepared to give comment right now. I think my personal opinion is we just wait till we're convened all together. Kim, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Well, I don't see any harm in either you or I voicing an opinion. We're only voicing it for ourselves, not representing the whole board. And that, I don't see a problem with it. I think it would be a great spot for Mountain Line to put their main office at. The only question I have, and I think I know the answer, but I just want to confirm it. The buses would not, and I can't remember the street name that's on the west side. The buses would not be going through the cemetery. It would be entering and exiting on that north side street. Is that correct?
Yeah, and we wouldn't be going through the cemetery, I don't believe.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
In the planning that we're doing for this area, we're anticipating that the street that we're calling Burns, which would run up
Right,
along the
Burns,
east side of the
okay, yeah.
cemetery, that's going to be a collector street, so it would carry more of the bus and car and truck traffic.
Mhm.
But it would really reduce the amount of traffic using Rogers along the cemetery, because eventually there will be other routes.
Uh-huh.
And the primarily the traffic of buses would be to the south, so we wouldn't be adding a lot of traffic next to the cemetery with buses.
So, and there might be, again, I don't want to speak for everybody else on the board, and I'd love to hear their comments and feedback, but the north portion of the site is cemetery property. And in the process of that sale, it's there. I don't know, you didn't mention like how the cemetery benefits from that sale, or maybe I missed that part.
So the property, it's city-owned property, and there, through the strategic plan and through past discussions, it's been clear that that property was acquired for the benefit of the cemetery, and the city council has agreed with the city, or with our strategic plan, to say that the cemetery should receive some benefit from the sale of that property. Right now, the city's policy is that any city property that's sold, the proceeds go to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So there would need to be action by the city council to also agree to send some of that revenue to the cemetery for their use as well.
I mean, that just seems that, yeah, that would be really helpful if we are ending up building a new office space or workshop or any other the enhancements that we want to do with the cemetery.
Yeah, I think as far as our strategic plan, it's good in the way that I think it's a compatible land use, and it has that potential to bring some revenue for those projects that we're starting to look at more seriously. We just kicked off the architectural work for the new office and some site work, so I think that's really good timing for something like this to happen.
Could you talk a little bit just in terms of that process? Like, is there, I don't know it, but is there like a, in terms of the sale of public property, does that go through an appraisal Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, so the property has to be appraised and we have to agree on those appraised values, and then that's what's established as fair market value, and Mountain Line would acquire it at that value. And then as far as how that revenue gets used, that's part of our budget process. So we would need to get requests into our budget for the things that we need to do on the cemetery, and then council could fund those using this revenue. The timing on that, we're not going to get that into our budget cycle for this year. So, and we're not certain that this is going to happen. So we would look at that probably next year, but right now it would be good for council to acknowledge that funding will go to the cemetery.
Okay. And open up to staff. Do you have any comments?
Brett, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I agree with what Kim had to say. You know, I'm all for it. I don't have any problems with it at all.
Is that land, where the buildings are right now, is it up for sale, or is that something that, Corey, that you guys are seeking to acquire?
Yeah, it's not up for sale right now, so we would have to negotiate the sale of it. So that could be another hindrance. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll close that. Jeremy, do you want to talk about the White Pine Park relocation?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick update on that. I don't have a lot of information on it, but we have been in the process of looking at an alternative location for White Pine Park. White Pine Park is the park along Scott Street, just north of Zip Beverage. It's undersized, and City Parks has been looking at a larger park for this neighborhood. So the two areas that we've talked about, one is part of the cemetery property along Rogers, and the other is the property owned by the Catholic Diocese, St. Mary's Cemetery, which is on the other side of Shakespeare from the city property. Both would provide about 5 acres of property. Our first choice would be to negotiate something with the diocese, because we think that the land that the city owns on the west side of Shakespeare is really better suited for housing. And while it could function just fine for a park, it would be nice. I think the cemetery and the remainder of that land that the diocese owns is a really good location for a park. So we're working on that. We've made some progress with negotiations with the diocese, and it seems to be moving forward in a favorable way. So that's really all I have to update you on at this point. Should something change in that process, I'll be sure to come back and let you know about it.
Okay. Any comments on that from the board, staff? Okay. So going back to our original discussion, thank you, Jeremy, for that information. Thanks for the presentation. Can we go ahead and try and schedule some special meeting for prior to next Wednesday, so we can get some board feedback to Public Works on the Mountain Line and Rogers Street property proposal?
Yep, I'll reach out to the city clerk's office to see when we can get one scheduled, hopefully for Monday.
Okay. And Katie,
oh, sorry, Paul.
I'm just gonna go ahead.
If we could just stay away from 10 to 12. I do have a meeting that I have to be at on Monday from 10 to 12, but otherwise I'm open.
Okay,
Yeah, and for my part, I would say stay away from Monday morning. So anytime Monday afternoon.
okay. Hopefully I'll know today and get that out to you.
And Katie, will you reach out to the rest of the board and just see if we see if we can get a quorum as well?
Yep, I can reach out to everyone.
Thank you. And Brett will let you go through your continuing business items at that time.
Okay.
All right. If there's nothing else, then we can call.
I'll just add one thing. I will get those slides to Ashley so she can post them to the meeting. And I will also get you the actual letter of intent that is going to council next week as soon as it's available. So the board has those things.
Thank you. All right. That's it then. I don't think we have to call an adjournment. So I think we're good to go. Thank you all. And again, thanks, Jeremy, for the presentation.
Thanks all. I appreciate the input on it. Hopefully we can get together next week.
Right on. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.